growing up, I didn't necessarily go to galleries or museums, but I was influenced by the art through comic books. That's what was one of my main influences growing up. My brother had an old stack of comic books. He threw me his old ones, and I just devoured them. Even before I could read, I was diving right into comic books because they told the story visually, right? So even before I could read, I was able to flip through this narrative, sequential art, and understand what was going on. And this influence still comes with me today. A lot of my inspiration comes from the very dramatic point of view, all the different fonts and lettering, the very graphic black line, the style of it. You can see it plainly in all of the art that I create today. And so I've always been drawing. I've always been creating art since I was small. One of the big influences was when my brother took me to Mexico City for the first time, and I saw the great murals of the Mexican mural movement, and I understood from that moment that art could be used for a bigger purpose, right? These public works, we're talking about science, philosophy, history, revolution. They were bigger ideas, and they were put out to the public. So that had a huge impact for me. So what could I do with art to make a political snap, or to educate in some way, to get out information? So I'd always been creating art, But unfortunately, I didn't have that much money to go to art school. I didn't have that much money to go to college, even. So I followed my brother's footsteps, and I joined the military. And I served 4.5 years in the United States Air Force. And during that time, I was continuing my art, and I was creating images like this, right, that detail what I was doing during that time. And I was a sentry for 4 years. That's what I did. I babysit warplanes and ammunition and all these vehicles of death. And it was a real. I lucked out, and I went into the military right in between both Gulf Wars. So during that time, you know, I was very fortunate that the only enemy that I was really concerned with was with the Sandman trying to put me to sleep on post. So this is a drawing that was made during that time. So eventually I started making more silly caricatures and satire, making fun of fellow troops, making fun of the officers, and eventually making fun of the military, the government itself. So I had some kind of early impetus of creating type of political cartooning. After I joined the military, I went on to use that GI Bill, went to get my undergrad, my BFA, at the University of New Mexico, and I was concentrating in painting and drawing. But during that time, I understood that I needed something more, so I started taking Chicano studies, and that's what really galvanized my influence of what I wanted to create. I wanted to create art that told these stories that I had not been aware of. My primary education, they told us about George Washington and pilgrims, but that had nothing to do with me. I wanted to learn about my own history. So, for instance, this is Joaquin Murieta. Murieta is a local guy, if not many people know about him, right? Murieta, during the 49 gold rush, his land was taken, and his wife was raped, and he went on a rampage against the miners here in the Bay Area. He was eventually caught up by the authorities and decapitated, and he put his head in a jar of alcohol as a trophy, and as a warning to the others, right? The others in town. So this story was fascinating to me when I was younger, and when I was taking these classes, and I wanted other people to learn about it, other people to be introduced to these heroes and heroines that I wasn't told. So I started making paintings about them. But I started taking other classes too. I started taking printmaking classes. Now the idea with the print is it's breaking this idea of the fine art, because you don't have this one precious object anymore. Now with a print you have multiple, so you could have multiple images sent out to multiple places and can be seen at the same time. That was the idea of me getting out this information, getting out these stories. And I went even farther, and I started publishing in my university newspaper, the Daily Local. So it's the same thing, making more to get out more, a broader audience to get out more information, right? And then taking these Chicano studies, I was now looking at things through a new perspective, right? There's a new lens that I was trying to get people to be aware of. For instance, you know, who conquers who, and or who discovers who, right? And my publisher eventually, when I graduated, my publisher of my newspaper told me I needed to name my political series, so I called it El Machete Illustrated. El Machete is an old moniker that comes from this old communist newspaper that was developed by Rivera and Siqueiros in Mexico City. But I was going to make an illustrated version, so mine was El Machete Illustrated, right? And again, I like to create these political cartoons about stories that people are not aware of. Like some of these issues get lost to all the media, right? So every day there's a new tweet and things get buried and people don't know about it. So I like to find stories that aren't getting the spotlight that it deserves, such as these poor prisoners who are being, who are fighting the fires here in California. But once they get released, they have all this experience, but they're still not able to work the fire department. So the next one. I have a cast of characters I often use in my political cartoons. One of them is the fat cat. The fat cat is a representation of the oligarchs, the people with all the money who basically run the show, right? If you're familiar with what happened just the other day, these oligarchs are paying for their spoiled little brats to get into school while they're not really shouldn't be getting a leg up on everyone else who's doing better academically, right? Let's go to the next one. The other two cast of characters I often use in my political cartoons is Uncle Sam and Lady Liberty. Lady Liberty I often portray her as the more liberal type, and Uncle Sam is the more conservative, right-wing. And often Uncle Sam's usually doing something devious and manipulating Lady Liberty or hurting her in some way. They're almost like a domestic partnership, like a husband and wife type of combo duo that are struggling to deal with the different polarities of the United States system. And I often show that cartoon to people, and they're like, "What's getting? What's the coming way?" So it actually holds very true that people already forget about this blemish that's on top of Lady Liberty's nose. Right? No one even talks about it anymore. It's already been forgotten. So the next one, and unfortunately, Lady Liberty has been evolving in my political cartoons to the detriment. She's no longer the open-armed symbol of welcoming the immigrant. She's now becoming this kind of demonic Llorona type figure who haunts the ditch banks looking for children to capture. So Lady Liberty has transformed perspectives in my cartoons, unfortunately. So the next one, and history. History is very important. Again, when I was taking those Chicano studies classes, it was really important for me to understand my history, so I understand my place in life. And if we don't know the past, we don't understand the present, and then we can't move forward, right? So for this instance, this recently happened. Oscar Romero, a great activist and priest down in El Salvador, was massacred by assassins trained by the United States military. And the thing about it is that this man was a peace activist. He was trying to fight for his people in El Salvador. And I bring up this point because this is one small microscopic event that talks about the bigger picture of what's happening in Latin America. The United States and all the politicians are talking about these waves of immigrants coming, right? They're talking about this exodus, or this what does Trump call it? Caravan. The caravan, but this invaders, like but this is a specific term. He's calling it like but he's calling it like there's a big problem that's happening, right? Emergency, right? It's this big emergency that happens, but no one ever looks back far enough to understand why these people are coming. right? So one of the things about this cartoon is if we understand what happened in these countries, if we understand the United States' role and intervention in Latin America, in Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, and so on. There's over like 52 or 56 different interventions in Latin America the United States is involved with. And people don't realize when you manipulate the government, you crush their economy, you put in a puppet regime, you put in death squads, it forces people to flee. And they migrate to other places, other stable places. And the irony is the United States is one of the stable places they migrate to, even though they're the ones that push them out. So this is just a small snapshot of what happened, or the reasoning why migration is happening. And if you don't understand the past, you can't understand the present, right? And you can't go on from there. So that's what my cartoons are about. They're dealing with all these different types of histories and unknown stories that we should be aware about, that we should be learning, we should know about, to help us kind of make it through these dark times in this country. All right, thank you.
Okay, so as we go ahead and switch out the screen, thank you, Eric, for that. We actually got a good chance to take a look at some of your photos, and we're going to be coming back to some of those ideas. So if you had any questions about them, go ahead and jot them down and save them for as we, at the end, we'll have an opportunity to have those questions answered. So next we're going to welcome to the stage Angelo Lopez. Angelo Lopez is the weekly cartoonist for the Philippines Today, U.S., and contributes to the European website, The Cartoon Movement. Angelo was the winner of 2016 RFK Book and Journalism Award for editorial cartoons. Angelo's work offers sharp commentary on such issues as religious intolerance, sexual violence, women's rights, and censorship. He especially spotlights the challenges faced by marginalized Filipino Americans and Filipinos overseas. Angelo is a graduate of San Jose State University. He has illustrated 3 books, yeah. I hope to talk about that a little bit too. Yeah. All right. He is a graduate of San Jose State. He's illustrated 3 books and has painted murals for Lester Shields Elementary School in San Jose and the Berryessa branch of the San Jose Public Library and the Sunnydale Public Library. And we have 2 of his books out front here. His latest book, Making America Great Again, which is outside, collects Angelo's editorial cartoons from the Cartoon Movement and the Philippines Today from the years 2016 to 2017. And so welcome to the stage, Angelo Lopez.
Thank you, everybody. I want to thank Eric for inviting me here, and Carlos and Ann as well. Thank you. So this is a painting I did a long time ago. If you're losing your hair, this is what you think of when you're So I did that. And the Philippines Today, it's a Filipino-American community newspaper that circulates around the Bay Area, and it has a readership of around 20,000 people. If you want to find it, just go to any Asian American supermarket. Hopefully it's there. And it's not wrapped around fish. So, a little bit about myself. To the left, my oldest niece, Stephanie. I have 10 nieces and a nephew. My father and my mom. My dad was in the Navy for 20 years. And then after he retired from the Navy, he cooked for a few more years until he retired for sure. And then my mom has been a housewife all this time, so, which is hard work. Yeah. So they're both immigrants from the Philippines. And for me, though, I was born here. I lived most of my life in America, and I've only been in the Philippines 1 month my entire life. So when I joined, when I became cartoonist for the Philippines Today, I saw this as an opportunity for me to get to learn about the Filipino-American community and to learn about the Philippines. So the person to the right is my wife. We've been married for 14 years, and I've been happy, and I'm hoping that she's happy too. So we actually live around, I didn't know this place existed, but we only live 10 minutes away. And so we're across the street from the cemetery. So, yeah, so if you want to walk in cemeteries, just come on. To give you an idea of some of my politics, these are some of the heroes that have shaped my politics. The Kennedy brothers, Martin Luther King Jr., Pete Seeger, and Dorothy Day. They're all to the left of the political spectrum, and what I admire about them is that they fight for the poor, or they fought for the poor. They fought for the working people, and they fought for groups that are marginalized or discriminated against. And so I want to they fight for, they speak up for people who have no voice, and that's something I want reflected in my politics as well. Okay. Most Filipinos like basketball, so I want to give a shout out to my favorite team, the Boston Celtics. My dad was a fan of the Celtics in the 60s, so he was a big fan of Bill Russell and Bob Cousy, and I became a fan of the Celtics during the 70s, and I've been a fan ever since. So, go Celtics. And so how do I get my ideas? When I first started the Philippines Today, the editor told me to look at this website, filmnews.com. And filmnews.com has links to all the major Philippine news websites. So I go there to take a look. And these are my favorite websites that I look to when I want to learn about issues. Rappler, the Philippine Daily Inquirer, ABS-CBN News, the New York Times, the New Republic, and the Nation. So if you ever want to read, you go ahead. I also go to protests and to marches, and I try to talk to activists, and 3 of them are here right now. So, but what I try to do is I talk to them, and I try to learn what issues are important to them, and then I go home, and I go to the internet, and I try to learn more about the issues. And I've learned a lot because they're in the grassroots. They tend to know about the issues before anybody else, and so I always feel like I have a head start when it comes to issues that the Filipino community or the Filipino American community are going to face. So one of the issues that I focus on in my cartoons is overseas Filipino workers. In the Philippines, the poverty rate is around 25–26%. So a lot of Filipinos go overseas to work, and then they send money back home. But one of the problems, there's a lot of problems with that. One of the problems is that oftentimes there's a large lag in time, sometimes years, sometimes even decades, between the time that these workers get to see their children and family. And so the long length of time that the parents and children see each other is a big problem for them. Another problem that Filipino Americans face is that Filipino American workers are often not covered by the labor laws in the countries in which they work. So that means that, in places like Hong Kong or in the Middle East, or sometimes even here, they're very vulnerable to exploitation since they're not protected by the labor laws. And one of the things that they're very vulnerable to is sexual harassment and sexual abuse. So, and another thing that they're vulnerable to is wage theft. Wage theft is where the employers don't pay the people who are working what they're supposed to be paid. So that's a huge problem, especially for domestic workers. So we have a situation where overseas Filipino workers are getting exploited for their cheap labor, and they contribute a lot to the Philippine economy, but it's not really doing a lot to reduce poverty. So another thing that's an issue that I learned a lot about is that I focus my cartoons on is the plight of indigenous workers in the Mindanao area in the Philippines. Mindanao is one of the biggest islands in the Philippines, so the reason they have problems is the land that they're in is rich in natural resources, so multinational corporations want to drive these people away from their land so they can mine the rich minerals. And Oakland by Anaheim. It's supposed to be a military campaign to fight against a communist insurgency in that area, but a lot of times mining companies take the militia to attack anybody who speaks out for indigenous people's rights. And so these militia have killed human rights activists, environmental activists, priests, nuns, anybody who speaks out for these indigenous people. And one of the indigenous people that's very vulnerable are the Lumad people. They value education very highly because with education that gives them the ability to defend themselves against these mining companies. So it's not in the interest of these mining companies to have these people educated. And so what they've been doing is that they've been attacking the schools, they've been attacking the teachers, and they've driven a lot of them into refugee camps that are hundreds of miles away from their original place of home. So, and another issue I focus on in my cartoons is the danger that journalists face in the Philippines. The Philippines is one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists right now. And it's because these journalists get killed for investigating mining companies, investigating corrupt officials, investigating the police, investigating criminal syndicates. And I don't know if you know President Duterte, but he's been the president of the Philippines since 2016, and he has a whole large group of online trolls that attack anybody online who criticizes his government. And so those trolls threaten rape to female journalists. They threaten to kill anybody who criticizes the extrajudicial killings for the drug war. So, and one of the groups that that Duterte especially right now is focusing on is a news media site called Rappler. And so they've done a lot of things to try to stop them from intimidate and stop them from saying the news and stuff. So last month, the founder of Rappler just got arrested for the trumped-up charge of tax evasion. So yeah, and so I think you can tell I don't like this policy of extrajudicial killings. Extrajudicial killings is where Duterte has allowed the police impunity to just kill people, or to kill people who are suspected of being drug, drug dealers, I guess. And he told civilians to, if the police are not around, to shoot them yourself. So I think according to some human rights groups, 26,000 people have gotten killed. 1/3 of those people who've gotten killed have been by the police. 2/3 of them have been killed by vigilantes. And so these people have gotten killed without ever defending themselves on trial. So I think it's pretty bad. And so even though I don't like extrajudicial killing, and I do think that there is a drug problem in the Philippines, but I don't think killing is the way to do it. But Duterte's popularity right now is in the high 70s, low 80s. So my view is not very popular. So that's why these cartoons I'm doing in the end of my presentation and not the beginning. So in case anybody doesn't agree with me and stuff, in case anything happens to me, at least you got to see my earlier cartoons. And yeah, this is just another one. So how's my time? Okay. So and I don't have it. It's just that I'm running out of ways of showing people getting killed and stuff in my cartoons, but so I've been doing a lot of skulls in my cartoons. So as well as doing issues in the Philippines, I'm also doing stuff about America. And one of the things I'm concerned about is trying to find ways of bridging the racial divide between the working class white communities that support Trump and the minority communities have been threatened by Trump. I don't know how to do that, but that's what I'm hoping eventually will happen. So, and with Trump, he's a lot of the bigotry that he's heaping on immigrants, heaping on Muslims and other groups. America has a long history of this. Other groups like African Americans, the LGBTQ community, Jews, Italians, Irish, Filipinos, Mexicans, Japanese, Mormons, Catholics. All of these groups have faced the same type of bigotry that immigrants and Muslims are facing now. So, and I think one of the ways we have to is to create a kind of thing where everybody's treated equally, and to get rid of white privilege. And I think things like getting rid of voter suppression laws, where minorities are the most affected by that, is one way in which we can help build a more equal society where everybody is treated equally and one side is not favored. So, and I think this cartoon I made, actually I was inspired by my brother-in-law. He's an anti-Trump conservative. And even though we disagree on politics, we actually get along pretty well. But in 2016, we really bonded because both of us were griping about Trump all the time. So, this was a way for us to bond. But I think my personal opinion is I think sane Republicans need to retake the Republican Party, because as long as the Republican Party is the party of white resentment, we're going to keep having these problems even after Trump's presidency ends. So, and then this is just my last hope cartoon, which I hope, where we find some way of bridging the divide. But, if you were to ask me how, I don't know, and stuff, but that's my hope. And I hope my cartoons, like with Eric, I hope my cartoons inspire people to think and maybe, I pose questions, but I don't have the answers. And I'm hoping when they see my cartoons, maybe they have answers that I don't have. So, thank you.
All right. So this is well, I was very excited to hear from both of you, but this is definitely the part of the evening I'm very excited about, because like I said, I had a lot of feelings while we were reading through the book, and so I have a lot of questions to ask you guys. But I want to start off with, I think both of you kind of talked to, is that one on too? So both of you kind of talked about, a little bit about your process, right? So kind of where you're getting your inspiration from, and going to these different websites and talking to activists and all of that. And one of the things that struck me about the cartoons is that there's these, the very current things that are happening, right? So I could definitely see those being pulled from storylines and things like that. And then there's almost these kind of standalones that depict an idea, right? So I'm thinking of like the corruption, and there's a guy following the trail in a circle with the money coming out of his pocket, right? And so that also illustrates just like one idea about politics, and a lot of metaphors that we're putting down onto paper, right? So I'm kind of wondering, in the process realm, is that something where you're collecting a bunch of ideas and kind of sitting with this for a while and, doing a lot of different things? Are you hearing something? Like I'm thinking, illegals are the spine of America, and then that becomes itself a comic. So is that a metaphor we're hearing or seeing in the news, and then, that's great, I'm going to draw that? Is it a process of collecting the information and kind of seeing what comes to you? Or after a couple of years, is it like you hear something and you're like, already drawing in your head? So what does that process look like for each of you?
I'm lucky as a political cartoonist that I do a weekly cartoon, and I have a week to go through and figure out what I'm going to draw. So other political cartoonists, professional quote-unquote political cartoonists, that's their job. That's what they do all day from 9 to 5. So every day they're pumping out a new cartoon. So I'm lucky in that way that I have a whole week to understand and figure out research and get an idea. So the way I work is all week long absorbing news. Like instead of, I don't listen to music when I create, I listen to the news. So I'm just constantly have NPR or something on just to be aware of what's going on. And at the end of the week, during the week I'm taking thumbnail sketches of what issues that I want to work on or what issues are not getting the limelight that should be getting the limelight. I'm doing thumbnail sketches. At the end of the week I go through these thumbnail sketches, pick one of those issues, and then go for it. Now, yes, I'm trying to come up with a visual of these issues is the challenge, right? To come up with a metaphor or some kind of clever way to illustrate it. That's the challenge, right? Because we're giving a lot of information in these one-panel cartoons. We're trying to condense a lot of complicated stuff into one illustration. Is the challenge of each week. And sometimes, some are easier than others. Sometimes I'm listening to the radio and they tell me what to draw. Sometimes the announcer will make an analogy that, I don't know, Trump is like a pig, and I go, oh, that's it, Trump's like a pig, and then I draw it, right? So sometimes it's verbatim, if someone's telling me what to draw, I say, yes, it's very clever, I just gotta illustrate, I just gotta visualize it for everyone to see. So some are easier than others, some it takes a challenge to grapple and figure out a visual for it.
Well, I'm actually in the same situation as Eric. I do weekly cartoons, and so like him, I have a longer period of time to do my cartoons. What I do though is I try to finish my cartoons by Friday, because in the weekend, that's when I spend my time with my wife and my nieces. So if I don't finish it by Friday, then I'm not in trouble. But it's just I have to do some stuff in the weekend. I don't know if you're similar and stuff. You have to finish it by when's your deadline?